I used to know the sound of our apartment by heart, the soft tick of the kitchen clock, the hum of the freeway like distant rain, the way your heels would pause at the mat as you searched for your keys, a small ritual that meant my day could end because you were home. Lately, the pauses grew longer. The mat cooled between your visits. I ate dinners alone that fogged the window above the sink, rice hardening in the pot, salmon flaking into silence. Your chair stood pushed in like it had somewhere else to be. I kept telling myself we were just in one of those seasons, work heavy, heads down, love saving its words for when the city went quiet. You started laughing at your phone, not at me, not with me, at your phone. A flash of teeth, a quick tuck of hair behind your ear, the kind of smile people save for beginnings. Just memes, you said, the way people say just smoke when they don't want to talk about the fire. In bed, you lay turned away, the light from your screen sketching your shoulder in a pale blue. I learned the shape of your silence. I learned that even breathing can feel like an argument if it's measured differently. On a Tuesday drenched in weather that couldn't make up its mind, mist, then sun, then a nervous rain, you asked if I could grab takeout. Anything, you said. I'm starving. I stood under the awning of the Thai place, watched drops thread the streetlights, thought about how hunger used to be something we shared. When I got home, you were in the kitchen with the faucet running hard, sleeves rolled, eyes too bright. We need to talk, you said, and the tap kept roaring like you needed the sound to push your words into place. We didn't sit. We leaned against opposite counters like two attorneys with nothing left to present. Your jaw worked, mine locked. I could hear the clock, the old hum of the freeway, the sound of the bag collapsing as the steam from the curry died. I want other men. The sentence landed between us with the calm of a knife set gently on a cutting board, not shouted, not argued, declared, as if you were reading a label and found it accurate. It's strange how the body moves before the mind. My fingers found the seam in the countertop. I pressed until I felt the edge bite. My mouth tasted like coins. Say that again, I heard myself say, but what I meant was say anything else. You went still, I don't want to lie to you. And then, because truth always arrives late, I think I've been lying to myself. There are moments that pull all the color out of a room. The cabinets went gray, the floor sharpened. I could list every object in sight, but not one thing that could save us. I thought of the night 3 years ago when we moved in, when the mattress was still on the floor, and we ate pizza from the box and declared the squeak in the hallway hours. I thought of your head on my chest, the way your hair smelled like rain and drugstore shampoo. I thought of how beginnings always make promises they can't keep without help. Is there someone? I asked. It sounded like a question you ask a doctor and hope to survive the answer. You looked past me, past the window, into a future where I didn't exist. There were some nights, dinners. It wasn't supposed to be anything. It felt like air I needed. You swallowed. I don't want to be married like this. I watched the steam rise from the rice and vanish. I realized that's what we'd been doing, turning to vapor, unnoticed, until there was nothing left to spoon. I won't share you, I said, no anger. Just fatigue, like laying a tool down after the job has already failed. I figured, you said, and I hated how prepared you sounded, like you'd practiced this debate with a kinder version of me. I asked for names. You shook your head. It won't help. Maybe you were right. Maybe knowledge is just another form of hunger. We didn't eat. The curry went cold. Rain started again, timid at first, then braver. You stepped around me, moved to the doorway, hand on the frame like a runner waiting for the gun. I'll stay at Mia's tonight, you said, choosing a name like a bandage. We'll talk tomorrow. I wanted to say, stay. I wanted to say, don't ruin us with your bravery. I wanted to say, we can go slow, we can fix, we can starve together until the hunger changes shape. Instead, I nodded. You grabbed a tote, the one with the coffee stain that looks like a small country, and you filled it with what felt like me. The door closed softly. The apartment exhaled. The clock kept time like nothing seismic had occurred. I stood very still. Sometimes stillness is the only way to keep from falling. In the silence, the phone lit the counter. A message slid across the lock screen, bright as a flare in fog. A name I didn't know, a heart, and a sentence that felt like a curtain lifting. I'll wait up. I stared until the light died and the room was gray again, and I understood that I was learning a new language, the tense you use when love is no longer present. I picked up the phone, thumb hovering over the glass, breath stuck somewhere behind my ribs. Outside, the rain chose a side and started to fall in earnest. The first night without you was an inventory of noises. The building's pipes sighed like an old man. A car alarm hiccuped 2 blocks over. Someone on the 4th floor laughed at a show and then coughed for too long. I lay on my back and counted ceiling cracks until the numbers stopped meaning anything. Your side of the bed stayed cold, a lake in winter, and I understood that warmth is a habit as much as heat. I didn't text you. I texted the emptiness. It didn't respond. Morning arrived like it always does, indifferent. I made coffee by muscle memory, ground, bloom, pour. The mug was the one you bought at a farmer's market, glazed a blue that never chose a final shade. I watched the steam rise and disappear and thought, this is how grief behaves in public. Visible, then polite. I wiped the counters until they reflected my hands. I straightened the stack of unread mail. I opened the closet and stood in the doorway, looking at your dresses, each one keeping its shape like a ghost in good posture. I found the tote you didn't take, the one with the broken strap, and inside a receipt from a restaurant we'd never been to. 2 entrees, 1 bottle of wine, a dessert split. The date was 3 weeks ago. The signature wasn't yours. It was a swoop of confidence. I pocketed the receipt and went for a walk because the apartment had walls and the street had sky. The city smelled like last night's rain and baking bread and someone's cigarette that wanted to be a memory already. I passed the cafe where we used to argue about nothing, salt over sweet, mountains over ocean, dogs who think they're people. I sat outside and watched trains of people pass, each one carrying their own private Tuesday. I tried on the word divorce the way you try a jacket in a store. Heavy, expensive, the sleeves didn't fit yet. The message on your phone, his name, the promise to wait, rubbed the inside of my skull like a stone in a shoe. I didn't know if I wanted to meet him or forget he existed. Both felt like losing. At noon my friend Daniel called because sometimes the universe gives you exactly what you can't ask for. Come over, he said. I'll make too much pasta and say the wrong things. He did both. He also listened. He poured me wine and let me talk in fragments, which is the only grammar grief understands. When I was done, the room felt less tilted. Do you want to know who he is? Daniel asked. His voice didn't carry malice, only logistics. I don't know, I said. I don't want to become the kind of person who collects details just to bleed from them. He nodded, then shrugged. Sometimes knowing the shape of the knife helps you stop turning into it. 2 days passed like a slow movie. I worked. I answered emails with sentences that had bones but no muscle. At night, I made 2 portions and ate one because rituals die last. On Friday, a message arrived from an unknown number. No heart this time, just, can we talk? A name attached Evan. The shape of the knife, I stared. Then I typed, about what? About her, he replied, and you, and me being sorry for the damage I did without looking. We met in a park at dusk because I wanted witnesses that weren't people. The sky held onto its light the way kids hold onto summer. Evan was tall in the way that made you think he'd been tall since 13. He wore a jacket that said he either had taste or had someone with taste buying for him. He looked like a man who didn't make mistakes, which made me distrust him immediately. He stuck his hands in his pockets. I didn't know, he said, at first. Anger is loud in the head and quiet in the mouth when you're tired. And then. He winced, then I didn't stop. He looked around the park like a better line might be hiding behind a tree. She told me she was considering ending things. I believed what I wanted. I imagined you saying those words, clean of context, like a permission slip. I imagined how seductive maybe can be when it's dressed like almost. You texted, I'll wait up, I said. I saw it. He nodded. I did, a breath. I thought it meant I was patient. It meant I was stealing. Wind threaded the leaves. A dog chased nothing until it looked like something. I realized I didn't hate him. I hated the version of me that refused to see the slow unspooling. What do you want? I asked, and the question tasted like metal. To give you back some dignity, he said, eyes not quite meeting mine. To tell you I ended it. Not because I'm noble, because I saw the wreckage and finally believed physics. Ended, the word didn't know where to sit. She told me she needed to figure herself out. I told her I'd made it harder to do that. He swallowed. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a boundary. I almost laughed, not at him, at how human we are, how we break a vase and then ask the floor for a truce. Don't contact me again, I said quietly. Live a good life. Make this the worst thing you ever did. He nodded like a condemned man receiving water. I'm sorry, he said again, and this time it sounded like a sentence he'd learned to keep. When I got home, the apartment greeted me with its usual orchestra. The fridge hummed. The neighbors argued about a show. The clock, faithful as a heartbeat, kept moving. I found your sweater draped over the back of your chair. I put it in a drawer because I couldn't decide whether to throw it away or sleep with it like contraband. That night you texted, not a paragraph, not a defense. 4 words, can I come by? I typed and erased until my thumbs throbbed. I settled on tomorrow, 6. I cleaned the apartment like forgiveness might be allergic to dust. I opened windows to let the day in. I made a pot of soup I'd seen your mother make when nothing else could be fixed. I placed 2 spoons on the counter and then put one back. At 5:58, footsteps in the hall. At 5:59, a pause at the mat. The key didn't turn. At 6 o'clock, a knock that sounded like someone asking permission to exist. I reached for the door, I let my hand fall. I made you wait, not out of cruelty, out of the simple desire to choose something for once. I stood with my hand on the knob and listened to the space between your breaths, each inhale a plea, each exhale a calculation. After a count of 10 that felt like a season, I opened the door. You stepped in as if the apartment might reject you, hair tied back, no makeup. A sweater I'd never seen, which made me wonder which version of you had purchased it. You smelled like rain and a candle I couldn't name. Your eyes took in the room the way you used to take in museum walls, hungry, ashamed of hunger. Hi, you said, as if we were neighbors in an elevator. Hi, I said, as if words could be neutral. We sat opposite each other at the table we'd bought secondhand, the one with a chip shaped like a crescent moon. You looked at the soup. You didn't reach for it. Silence set the table better than I could. I ended it, you said. Not how are you, not I'm sorry, the headline, no lead. I know, I said, and watched confusion pull your brows together. He texted, I added. We met. Color drained from your face like someone opened a valve. You what? I sighed. I needed to see the geometry of it. You nodded slowly, the way people nod when they've lost the reins. What did he say? That he believed what he wanted. You closed your eyes. I did too. We let that sit. The soup cooled. I want to tell you I'm sorry, you said finally. But that feels like putting a throw blanket over a broken window and calling it decor. Then don't, I said. Tell me what is true for you, even if it makes me smaller. You stared at your hands. I think I disappeared in our life, you said. Not because of you, maybe because of me, maybe because of the way I learned to be loved. You caught the word, corrected. That situation felt like oxygen at first, then like smoke. By the time I noticed I was coughing, I'd already told someone else to wait up. I wanted to hate you. I found, instead, a tired tenderness, like recognizing a bruise and touching around it. I wanted to be chosen, you continued. By you, by me, by the world. I kept auditioning for parts I didn't want because the applause was easier than silence. You looked up. I don't have a defense, I have a hole. I let those words map to the other holes in the room, the missing painting we never hung, the light fixture that flickered, the space your laughter used to occupy. What do you want now? I asked, because questions can be bridges even when you suspect there's no other side. To try, your voice thinned, not to erase, to rebuild, to look you in the eye while I tell you what I did and still ask to be loved. I thought of the vows we said in a municipal building under bad lighting, how we laughed when the pen didn't work, and the clerk produced a second like a magician. I thought of the rings, simple, unadorned, 2 circles that promised nothing and everything. I can't unknow, I said quietly. I can't be the man who never saw a name light your phone. I know, you whispered. I wouldn't ask you to pretend. We sat inside the soft machinery of evening. The freeway hummed. Someone upstairs ran a bath. The city dimmed the lights like a theater before the second act. You told me you wanted other men, I said, returning to the blade, boldly, like it was noble. Why? You winced, because if I made it a manifesto, I didn't have to face it as a wound. I nodded. And now? Now I have to live with having hurt the person who knew my middle school nickname and my coffee order and the way I take off my ring when I need dough. A small smile, then gone. You always put it on the windowsill like it needed light. I looked at the sill. The ring sat there, an obedient moon. I met him in a park, I said. I asked him to make this the worst thing he ever did. You closed your eyes, the kind of close that protects nothing. Thank you, you said, and the words sounded like surrender, not gratitude. I don't know if I can be with you, I added. The sentence rearranged the air. Tears pooled and didn't fall. I know, you repeated. I came to be told no, if no is what's true. We were very careful then. We spoke like people carrying glass. You told me about the dinners that became confessions. I told you about nights I mistook quiet for peace. You told me about the first time you laughed at your phone and felt your body betray you. I told you about the receipt in the tote and how signatures can be personality traits. The soup went cold enough to remember the fridge. Do you want me to go? You asked. I looked at the chair you hadn't sat in all week. I looked at the door that had learned your absence. I looked at the window, where the rain left commas on the glass like the sky had more to say. Stay, I said, on the couch. You nodded like someone given a blanket after the storm passes. You found the old throw with the frayed edge and curled beneath it, your feet sticking out like a footnote. I turned off lights one by one, leaving only the lamp that makes the room look gentler than it is. I lay in bed and listened to your breathing from the other room. Between us stretched a field of decisions, unplanted. At 2:13 a.m., the hallway light cracked on. I thought it was the neighbors until I saw the glow under our door brighten and then dim, brighten and then dim. The floor creaked. My door opened a breath. Are you awake? You whispered. I had been. Sleep had become a visitor who didn't leave a forwarding address. I turned onto my back and watched the ceiling take the shape of your shadow. You hovered at the threshold like a superstition. I couldn't, you said. The couch. It smells like the dog we never got. I sat up, pulling the blanket to my waist like modesty was a spell. Do you want to talk? You slipped in and sat on the edge of the bed, careful to take the corner like a polite thief. Up close, the new sweater looked cheaper, or maybe I was finally seeing it under our light. I keep rehearsing an apology that doesn't insult your intelligence, you said. There isn't one. There isn't, I agreed, and the relief in your exhale made me both love and grieve you harder. I thought love would be enough to keep me from doing the worst version of myself, you went on. Turns out love is what makes it possible to tell the truth after. We watched the streetlight paint the wall in a stripe. A car passed and the stripe went traveling. What happens to us, you asked, and my name in your mouth sounded like a history lesson. I don't know, I said. I know what I won't be. You nodded, shared. The word broke and kept going. We talked in low voices about logistics, keys, calendars, the rent due on the 1st. We split our life like a check at dinner. Half out loud, half in the ledger behind our eyes. And then we stopped because love doesn't abide by bullet points. You still wear it, you said, looking at my hand. I looked down, the ring, habit masquerading as hope. I slid it off and set it on the windowsill. It made the soft sound of an object remembering gravity. Do you hate me? You asked. No, I said. I hate the way we ignored the small droughts until the well cracked. We were quiet. The city pulsed like a creature we lived inside of. I thought of mornings we'd spent planning nothing in particular, how we'd get coffee and walk to the farmer's market and pretend to know what to do with Purslane. I thought of how we'd believed in the weather of us, that we'd survived one winter, we'd survived them all. You reached for my hand and stopped halfway. I met you there, somewhere in the middle of the bed, palm to palm, no fingers laced. We sat in that small cathedral of contact. I won't ask for another chance, you said, but I'll take one if it's offered, one day or 1 year from now. I don't know how to offer it, I said. I only know how to keep breathing. You smiled without teeth. That's something. The night thinned. The first suggestion of morning put a soft edge on the dresser. The room looked less guilty in the pale. You lay back on top of the covers, hands folded like a child taught to pray by adults who didn't. We watched the ceiling get lighter. We listened to the city rediscover itself. Somewhere, a bakery turned on its ovens. Somewhere, an early bus made promises to a route it would keep. I don't want to be enemies, you said. I don't even want to be friends yet. I want to be forgiven. I forgive you, I said, and the words surprised me by being true. Forgiveness arrived not as a triumph, but as a sigh. You cried then, quietly, the way people cry when they're not the only audience. I handed you a tissue from the drawer where we keep everything important. Rubber bands, old batteries, the photo strip from the day at the pier when we had cotton candy and sunburned noses. You held the tissue like you might frame it. When the light finally told the truth about the day, I got up and made coffee. The smell moved through the apartment like a memory of something that had worked. I poured 2 mugs and set one near you. You held it in both hands the way you hold an apology you're not sure you're allowed to keep. I'm going to look for a place, you said, voice steady now, close enough to return what's yours. Far enough to learn my own voice when I'm not harmonizing. I nodded. We talked about the practicalities again. Leases, movers, a day next week to pack the books we both claimed as a couple but not as individuals. You laughed once when we realized we each bought the same novel before we met, underlined the same sentence, different ink. When you stood to leave, the room shifted to make space for the door. You picked up the tote with the coffee-stained country and slung it over your shoulder. You looked around at the life we'd created like a museum curator cataloging artifacts. At the door, you turned. If I had been brave in the right direction, you said, I would have asked you for help before I asked for other people. I would have heard you, I said, if I hadn't been so good at listening to the version of us that lived mostly in my head. You nodded. Maybe the next versions of us will be better listeners. Maybe you opened the door. The hallway smelled like someone's toast and someone else's cologne. Morning had arrived fully. It poured in around you, made your hair look like a new idea. I'll send you times for the movers, you said. Okay. Thank you, you said, and it wasn't for the coffee. Go well, I said, because goodbye was too dramatic for the softness we'd built in the wreckage. You left. The door caught, then clicked. The apartment was all ribs and echo. I walked to the window and opened it. Cool air spilled over the sill. Traffic hummed like a promise to keep going. I picked up my ring and held it to the light. It looked the same. I felt different. I made the bed. I washed the 2 mugs and set them to dry, mouths down like silent singers. On the table, the soup had congealed into a version of itself that didn't require heat. I threw it away and washed the pot, the sound of water simple and clean. I sat at the table with a notepad and wrote a list that wasn't a list. Call Daniel, return library books, buy new sheets. Find the park where the light looks kind in the late afternoon. Learn the sound of the apartment again. The morning light laid itself across the floor like a permission slip. I signed with my feet. Some losses end in rage, some in silence. Hours ended with a door opening and the day stepping in. I picked up my ring. I put it in a drawer. I kept my hand. Outside, a bus sighed at the stop. A child laughed like nothing was broken. I breathed in, and for the first time in days, the breath didn't snag. I forgave myself for not seeing sooner. I forgave you for wanting air and choosing smoke. I forgave the version of us that thought love could survive without maintenance. I stood, I made toast. I let the morning be what it was, new, indifferent, luminous. And in the quiet, I felt the smallest lift inside me, like a curtain moving before the windows even open. Like a curtain moving before the windows even open.